Hey everyone, it's Dr. Mel here, and I have an exciting opportunity for you. I'm looking for 2 interns who would love to share your expertise in exchange for a scholarship to my Entrepreneur Academy. So if you've ever thought about starting your own educational consultancy, but you're just not quite sure exactly what you would do, I can help you with that. That's what you're going to learn in my Entrepreneur Academy. I'll help you figure out exactly where your interests, your purpose, your passions, your skills, all of your experiences, all of your expertise, where those align to be the perfect educational consultancy for you. So if you have some mad skills in social media marketing or email marketing or anything at all that you could help me in my business, then hit me up. I'm doing much of the work myself at this moment, and I could really use the help. And I know that there are some really creative educators out there who would love to exchange your services in order to learn how to start your own educational consultancy. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes. All you have to do is click on it, give me your name and email, and I will reach out to you with more information. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Mel Vandevort, and today I have with me a special guest joining us all the way from Delaware. I have Dan Rigby, and Dan is not just a dedicated public high school PE teacher, but he's also the founder of Win the Day, which is a business aimed at helping student athletes achieve their goals through structured academic planning and mindfulness practices. And he created a planner around that. And we talked a lot about discipline, or the importance of discipline, and practicing perfect in all aspects of your life. Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests. Put your leadership in motion and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. Welcome back to Empowered Educator. I'm your host, Dr. Mel Vandevort. And today I have with me a special guest. I have Dan Rigby from Delaware. And Dan is going to talk about his journey, and also he has a business that he runs. And so he's going to talk to us a little bit about that. So welcome to the show, Dan.
Dr. Mel, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here all the way from Delaware.
I am super excited to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a public high school PE teacher. My first 5 years, I was a special education teacher. I didn't go to school to be a teacher. I kind of went the roundabout way to be a teacher, but it's a passion of mine. I've now been a teacher for 15 years, and teaching is teaching, no matter the content. So I love that. I also was a 15-year high school wrestling coach, recently stepped away from that, another big passion of mine. And really, at the end of the day, what I love to do is help young students reach their potential, realize their goals, and make the best versions of themselves. So that's the business I'm in, whether it's a private business, whether it's a public school teacher, whatever it is, that's the business that I'm in.
And that is very commendable. And it's the same whether you're teaching kids in high school or whether you're teaching adults in a different capacity. So it's the same on my end of the teaching world now. I'm no longer teaching in a public setting, public education setting or typical education, but I'm still teaching adults how to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And I'm still learning that myself. So it's an ongoing journey, whether you're the teacher or the learner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on something really important there. It's like you have to practice what you teach. I always don't always say practice what you preach. I say practice what you teach, because if you actually live that lifestyle, it's a lot easier to get across to the students, whether they're adults, whether they're high schoolers, or whether they're 5-year-olds.
Absolutely. And I do love that. That's a good catchphrase. Practice what you teach rather than what you preach. You're exactly right. I have this book that it's an education book, and it is, I think it's called Practice Perfect or something like that. You have to practice, but you can't practice the wrong way. You have to practice the right way, because if you practice the wrong way, you're building bad habits. And so I mean, you know this from being a coach for sure. If you don't practice hitting a ball or making a shot or whatever the right way, it doesn't matter how much practice you get. You're never going to get it because you're doing it incorrectly. So, and I'm a jogger, so I definitely, I'm working on practicing the right way on that, getting back into it for sure.
It's funny you say that. I literally just got done talking with a colleague of mine, and one of my favorite little catchphrases is how you do something is how you do everything. I think Nick Saban kind of made that popular, but it's so true. Like my PE classes and my coaching, it's a lot of times our young athletes believe that we just turn it on during game time, or I'll just do it when. And the realization is you have to do it all the time the right way in order to be able to do it right way when it really matters. And so whether that's jogging, whether that's teaching, whether that's practicing your sport, giving a speech, whatever it is, you have to practice it like it's for real all the time. And I think that is a societal, a new age society thing where athletes and students don't always believe that they should do their best at everything. So, but that could be a conversation for another day.
Right. But I agree with you. And me being a Christian, I always try to do it as if I'm doing it for the Lord, no matter what I'm doing. So, I mean, he's always watching. So do you really want to do it badly in front of him? Because someone's always watching.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So tell us a little bit about your business. Tell us about your journey into education, into leadership, into the business world. Tell us all about those things.
Yeah, so I'll start within the education, because it is kind of a roundabout method. I was a student at the University of Delaware. I thought I had a career path chosen, and it just didn't come to fruition. I thought I was going to be a state trooper, and that's kind of what I always wanted to do, and it just didn't work. And so now it's like, well, what's your fallback plan? And I hate this about teachers. A lot of times it's a fallback, and I don't look at it as a fallback. For me, I was so passionate about coaching. I was already coaching at the time that I knew that my true calling in life was to teach. And I threw myself like straight in teaching. I needed to get this thing done. I don't have a teaching degree. I have a degree in history, which basically qualifies me to work at a museum or give some tours at a battlefield. But I was able to, and I was able to, get hired on as a wrestling coach. And I said, I want to be a teacher too. And they said, Dan, there's a problem. You don't have a teaching degree. And I said, well, if you want me to be a wrestling coach, you need to find me a teaching job. And I'll promise you that I'll be the best teacher you have in this entire school. And I meant it. It wasn't until 3, 4, 5 years later that I actually made good on that promise because I had to learn how to be a teacher. But ever since I started, ever since I walked into the classroom for the first time, I never looked back. I tell people all the time, my Mondays and Saturdays look identical because I get so excited to come to school. It's a passion of mine. It's what I love to do. I entered teaching because I wanted to coach, and then I was coaching because I was teaching. It kind of flip-flopped.
Right.
And it's just a huge passion of mine. I stepped away from coaching 2 years ago because I was a coach ever since I was a freshman in college. I never had a Thanksgiving or a Christmas without practices.
Right.
And I just felt like my calling was to do something else. And what I realized is once you step away from coaching, you're not done coaching. So I was working with student athletes in my school, and I recognized that their habits and routines didn't always match what it is that they wanted to accomplish. Kind of similar to what we just talked about. What are you doing in everything in your life that's going to help you get to that next step? So I decided to build an academic kind of habit tracker slash planner slash journal. And
Mm-hmm.
I just gave it to these athletes, and it made a big difference. And then next thing you know, another team said, "Hey, can we have one of these? Can we have some of these? Can we have some of these?" And before you know it, I was losing money left and right because I was doing this out of the goodness of my heart. And almost exactly a year to the day, we're now, selling these all across the country. We have a paper-based planner. We have a mobile app, and it's all about just good, healthy habits and routines geared around student athletes and their academics, their athletics, their mindfulness, all those strategies. So we've been in business for about a year, and the parallels between the two are just huge.
So this is something that you could use at home too. If you're, well, like me, I'm trying to get back into jogging and it's a slow go. So would this be something that I could purchase and use at home?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that. Right now, the planner that we have is geared specifically towards middle school, high school, and college age student athletes. So there's an area in there that says, what are your goals for practice today? If Dr. Mel says my practice today is running a 5K, then you could absolutely write those goals down.
Mm-hmm.
But it says things like, how can I be a better teammate? Well, how can I be a better friend? How can I be a better significant other? Those are things that we're currently working on.
Mm-hmm.
We're modifying our one version of our planner to make it more of a version less geared towards the high school student athlete. But our focus is still on the student athlete, and because I'm still teaching full time, my time is stretched a little thin right now. But absolutely, there are people who use our planner in the professional world, whether they're in CrossFit, whether they're in running. But
Mm-hmm.
just know we are building one for the busy adult as we speak.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So when we talked before, you had mentioned that there was a connection between being a teacher or a leader and your business. Can you give us some of those connections and how those can translate from one to the other?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me, and I just think back to when I became a teacher, I thought it was all going to go really smoothly. And what I learned very quickly was there's going to be a lot of detours, a lot of bumps in the road. I'm going to mess up a lot. And the best thing that I can do for myself is recognize that we're going to have setbacks, and how do I get back in the saddle to correct those setbacks. So as an early teacher, I made a lot of mistakes. I didn't communicate the right way with some of my students. I didn't always communicate the best way with my colleagues, my co-teachers, and things of that nature. And that's the same in business, right? Like I've messed up so many times in the first year, and it could easily have said, "Dan, this is not for you. Just call it quits." Or I can say, "Let's fix this." I mean, we're in the middle of revamping our entire mobile app right now, and I don't know if you are familiar with the mobile app building process, but it's wildly expensive. But I knew that this was part of the process, and I'm very process oriented. The journey has been great in both capacities. And so for me, the product is seeing a student be successful. The journey to get that student to success was not always easy, but it's worth it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
journey to put this product to market was not always a smooth, straight line, a linear line. It was zigzagged all over the place, but we're almost there now. We're end market, we're selling, we're doing things well. And so that process oriented mindset has really come into handy for me, but it's also the way we coach in athletics. It's, wrestling practice is tough. Getting to wrestling every single day, like there's no glamour and glit. There's nothing like really, really shiny about the wrestling practice. It's hard. And in order to get what you want on the other side, you got to go through difficult things. And whether it be in education, whether it be in coaching, or whether it be in business, you just have to know that this is not going to be a linear path, and there's going to be ups and downs. And, I always use the analogy of I like to take the rough side of the mountain because that's where the views are the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've done in every capacity. I don't have a teaching degree. I wasn't the best wrestler, and I have no business background, and I just figure out a way to get it done. And I mess up a lot, and that's enjoyable for me. So there's a lot of parallels there for sure.
Absolutely. And it's a great mindset to have. It's that growth mindset for sure. And a couple of things I was jotting notes as you were talking because I didn't want to forget. But when you are first a teacher or you move into a leadership position or you start your own business, communication can be hard. That is a learned skill. That's a learned skill for kids, especially in today's world, because emojis say everything. So, or an abbreviation. And I have to look things up sometimes when people send me stuff. I'm like, I don't even know I don't know what that means. And so I'll have to like Google it to find out. But it is a learned skill, and it's okay to learn that as you go. And you get to be a better communicator as you practice being a communicator. And then also the processes, the systems, and being disciplined. That is also a learned skill. And it's a great skill to teach our students, but we have a lot of adults that have to learn that skill as well. And discipline it's hard. And I have to be very disciplined in my own business. I had to be disciplined as an educator, whether I was a teacher or whether I was a principal or when I was a dean of instruction. I had to be disciplined in the way that I did things. And I had to have processes and systems in place to be effective and really to maintain my own sanity in some aspects, because you can overdo things. And if you don't have a good system in place, you either miss things or you just can't get everything done in a timely manner, or you can get things done, but it may not be the best because you don't have those systems and processes in place. And being disciplined is that skill, again, like we've talked about, or whatever you said. I have to be very disciplined in working on my jogging right now because it's been so long. I mean, it's been months and it's slow going, getting back into it. My legs hurt. I have to be careful so I don't get my shin splints again. And right now I'm walking more than I'm jogging, but that's okay because I'm still doing it every day. And that is the same whether you're moving into a leadership position. You have to be disciplined in how you do things within your office, within the context of your building, and then in business for sure. Being a podcaster and trying to do group courses and individual coaching and still grow my educational consultancy. That takes a lot of discipline and a lot of organization.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of things there that I want to just go back to. And if I ramble on a minute here,
that's okay.
I'll get to it. The system part is so important. And being a full-time teacher, you have your systems in place. And the faster I'll speak at different schools and things like that, and I talk at length about systems. And teacher burnout's real. Teacher retention is real. And I believe that this is maybe a little bit controversial. I don't believe that teachers are overworked. I believe that enough teachers don't have the good system in place to be able to handle that work. And so some of the things that I learned through the process of being a teacher have helped me in business. And so let me give you an example. When I first started teaching, I was the guy who would roll out of bed, shower real quick, and get to school. I was always early, but there was never separation between my personal life and the school in the morning. The last 7 to 8 years, I wake up wildly early because I know this for me, I need that time alone in the morning where I can drink my coffee, I can read, I call it SSP, still silent and present, and then I can work. And in some days I'm working on school stuff, but in other days I'm working on business stuff. And I need to be able to know what my plan is for the day. So when I get to school, when Johnny comes to the office early or Susie comes early, I'm ready. I have everything in place to be able to handle all those things. And I think teachers that are overwhelmed sometimes haven't figured out the system that allows them to be able to handle those curveballs that are thrown at us every day in school, but also in business. Second thing you mentioned that's so wildly important is discipline. I just talked to a colleague of mine who's a coach, and motivation comes and goes. Right now, we're at the end of the school year. The motivation for a lot of teachers is the light at the end of the tunnel. It's summertime, but and they can get there, right? We're there, we can get there. But rewind a month ago and motivation might be gone for a lot of people. It's the discipline that gets you up every single morning. Just like running, I run, and there's a lot of mornings where I don't want to run. The motivation comes and goes. I don't want to do this, but I do it anyway because discipline has told me that I need to do this. This is important for you, Dan. You like everything about it. You're not feeling it right now, but go do it anyway. You'll thank me later. And I think we negotiate with ourselves a lot where we'll have this little inner dialogue where we'll say, well, it's just okay. And I've been there and I'm guilty of this. This goes back to leading yourself. It's negotiating with yourself is from time to time, I guess it's okay. I do it. But what happens when it's a second day and a third day and a fourth day and a
Exactly.
fifth day? And before you know it, you're out of practice for 3 to 4 weeks and you're like, how did I get here? That's how.
Yes.
That's how. So the
Uh-huh.
lack of discipline. And then last but not least, the communication piece. One of the things that I had to learn the most about communication, two things. Number one, I needed to listen more. I needed to listen more and stop thinking of the answer before I already gave it. I wrote down notes while you were talking rather than interrupting because that's what I do sometimes. I got to get better at that. But the second thing is I had to recognize that because I mean something in my communication, it doesn't mean that person's receiving it that way. And I
Yes.
think in the world that we live in, because text messages don't have tone and pitch and emojis don't really always tell the story, that we have lost the ability, or we're not there yet, but we're losing the ability to have effective communication interpersonally with one another,
Mm-hmm.
where there is this mutual respect and this dialogue that goes back and forth. And I need to be cognizant of how you're receiving my message just as much as I am delivering it. And I think that was something I had to really, really learn, like sarcasm, for instance. I'm a sarcastic guy. There's a lot of my students who cannot handle I stopped being sarcastic because
Right.
it's not a good thing for a lot of students. And if they
Yes.
can't handle my sense of weird dad humor, it doesn't work. And now I have to go back and repair a relationship with the student. And so I had to learn that the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really important. So a lot of stuff you dropped there, I want to just mention.
Absolutely. And then I took notes on what you were saying. So I've got some follow-ups as well. You were talking about the new teachers or just teachers in general, maybe not having systems in place. And so it might not be that their workload is too heavy. They just don't have those proper systems. But what I did as a teacher is I leveraged other people to help me. I didn't do a lot of things in my classroom. My students did. I had classroom economy and they loved it. They got to take ownership. They owned the classroom. They owned turning off lights. And, when I was at the end of my teaching, I taught sixth graders. So they were pretty self-sufficient. And they didn't have to check in with me to even go to the bathroom. I knew where they were because I had a system for that. And I knew that only one person at a time was out of the room. And they were able to self monitor basically. So you just have to teach that as a skill to your students, but then you can leverage them. But you can do that in your professional life as well. And so leveraging the skills of others right now, at the beginning of my career as an entrepreneur, my educational consultancy and my coaching and podcasting and all of the things that I've got, I was doing it all. And now I'm bartering with people. I'm letting them into my course and they're helping me do things that I just don't have the capacity to do, not because I can't, but because they may be better at it than me. And I don't have time to do all of the things well. And so I have to use their skills to help me, or I'm never going to grow my business because I can't do it all. And then you were talking about getting up early and that kind of thing. And I do that exact same thing. I've always been an early person. I do my coffee, I do my Jesus, take a little time to get my day thought out. And I always write down my 3 big rocks. What are the 3 things that are non-negotiable for accomplishing today? If I get those done, then yes, I can fit those other things in. But these are my 3 non-negotiables. And I only do 3 because it's not overwhelming and it is achievable.
Yeah. I'm just going to go back to 2 other things. I think we keep doing this.
Uh-huh.
I think one of the things that we as teachers and people in general, we're fixers. I think we fix a little bit too
Oh,
much
yeah.
from time to time. And
Yes.
I think in the post-COVID era, we have given so much grace and I love it. And I think it's great. But I also think that we've created lack of accountability and lack of self-efficacy, if you will. And I think one of the things as a teacher that I've gotten better about is exactly what you said, is I don't have to do it all, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing what my students can do when I give them some parameters and I say, go, right?
Yes.
I always talk about social emotional learning and I tell all my students, like, the best place to social emotionally learn was recess. It's recess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you figure out so many things about each other and
Mm-hmm.
you work together. So in my classes, we call them SEL days, where here are your parameters, here are your rules, you figure it out, and I'm grading you based on your ability to do X, Y, and Z. And when I started doing that, I was shocked that they can do so much more when I get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yes.
I don't have to teach for 20 minutes about this. They can figure it out. But then I was doing the same thing in wrestling. Show it, let them do it. If you need to
Mm-hmm.
fix it, you fix it. Go fast. Let them show you what they can do, and they're always going to surprise you. And then before you know it, it's not a surprise anymore. It's the norm. It's the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing you mentioned about capacity and being able to work with a team and things like that, I think in order for, and this is leadership 101, right? Like levels of leadership is really important. And you could talk about the Maxwell levels of leadership, but in order for you to be a great leader, you need to be able to self-recognize where you're strong and where you're not. And
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be honest. And I think a lot of times younger teachers or people who aren't able to lead effectively aren't realistic about where they're really strong and where they need a little bit more support. And when you know where you're really strong, that's where you should really be focusing. And it's like for me, for instance, for me, I'm an awful writer. I'm a terrible writer. I should spend more time practicing writing, or I can spend my strength time over here where I'm going to gain a lot more advantage, and I can bring people in around me who can support me where I'm not strongest. And I think that's really important. I think that's important in teaching. I think that's important in leadership. I think that's important in coaching. Like if you know that you're just not super strong in an area, you can certainly build yourself up in the time to get there,
Mm-hmm.
but that's time. That's sweat equity. That is, and that's also like you become a control freak that way. And I also kind of function in that space a little bit. So I like that you said that as well.
Yeah. And definitely building those skills if you need to, or if you have to, because in some cases, as a classroom teacher, you have to build those skills. But don't feel like you have to know everything, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're in a leadership position, administration position, or whether you're starting your own educational consultancy or what you're doing, your own freelance business. You don't have to be an expert in every area, because you can leverage the talents of other people and you can let them shine as well.
Yeah, and I think the free market has really shown us this with things like Upwork and Fiverr, where you can jump
Yes.
on and find someone to help you with graphic design, someone to help you with this. And I think the best leaders do that better than everybody else. I mean, I really truly believe the best leaders surround themselves with the best people who
Mm-hmm.
make everybody rise together. And I think that's a really important principle of leadership, obviously.
Absolutely. I've been on Fiverr. I probably could have figured out how to do my book cover, but it would have taken me way too long. And then I would have missed my deadline of getting it published. And so I paid somebody like $13 to do it for me. It was well worth the
Exactly
$13 to
right.
have them do it for
Exactly right.
me.
Yeah.
So definitely. This has been a great conversation, Dan. Tell us one last tidbit of information, one last tip or big rock.
Yeah, it's for me, and this is kind of what I tell all my students. I sign yearbooks all at the end of the year, every year, and we're in a yearbook signing phase right now. And I just say it's always the right time to do the right thing. And I think if young adults and old adults and kids can just know that it's never the wrong time to do the right thing either. I think we'd be in a much better spot. So I pitch that to all my students. I pitch that to all my athletes. And if you live your life that way, those habits will stack on one another. And before you know it, you'll have a life fulfilled. You'll leave this place better than you found it, which I think is ultimately the goal.
You've had some great nuggets of wisdom today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much. If my audience wants to connect with you, or if they want to figure out how they can use your planner in their day, how can they find you? How can they find your planner?
Yeah, so if they go to winthedayplanner.com, that's our website, or they can follow us on social media, and it's at winthedayplanner. My email is also dan@winthedayplanner.com. Feel free to reach out to me anytime, and we'll get back to you within a couple hours.
Wonderful. And my audience, you know that I will have all of the information in the show notes, so you won't have any trouble connecting with Dan or finding the planner. Dan, thank you so much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Dr. Mel, thanks so much for having me.
And for the rest of you, thank you for joining me today. I will see you back here, same time, same place next week. Bye-bye.